Yes, a whole bunch of fighting took place during a joint practice. That happens. That's what usually transpires when two clubs get together in mid to late August. They are ready for week one. They want to go hit people for real. And they're basically set up to do kind of a joint session type of deal. And here's some of the video from yesterday's practice. There goes a helmet.
There she blows.
And
man down.
Man,
Two
man
men
down, man down. Mama goes that man.
What's that from?
Oh, no, Mark Jackson.
That's from, NBA Finals coverage from like the...
Come on, you got to at least know that.
Especially from the
Ay,
Mavs
Dios
final
mío,
run. That was
look
like
how
half
angry.
of every commercial, like going to commercial break every time. Hand down, man down.
There goes
Y'all
that
nailed
man.
that.
Yeah, this practice
More.
was nuts. And I'm glad we've got like the different angles because this is one of the good things about having a bunch of reporters out there is they all kind of line the field. Our camera got some from the backwards angle. This is like right up in Nick Harris and Joe Hoyt's face. Just the pushing and shoving that took place. Scuffle is a word we hear a lot as it relates to training camp fights.
Oh,
These are not scuffles.
No. Punches. Donovan
These are
Edwards
straight
with
punches.
a
You know
punch.
what? I give credit. 78 at least took his helmet off. Trying to take a helmet off. It's like hockey. Don't punch people with the helmets on.
Quarterbacks
It felt like
back
hockey.
there like this.
It felt like hockey.
It
That's
was
the
kinda
crazy.
hockey-esque.
And again, it's not like fights don't break out. Like these happen all the time in training camp. But usually it's like one or two. The lid pops off. All right, everyone, calm down. Let's just finish this thing out the right way. This kept going, and it was one of those like you see the first tweet come out, and you're thinking, okay, that's standard. And then when the next 6 or 7 kind of follow after that, you're just going, what is even happening?
Yeah.
Well, it felt like we weren't even getting necessarily like plays. We were just getting fight after fight after fight videos. And I saw Louis Riddick talking about him, like his perspective on fights at these joint practices, saying he absolutely hates it. You're not supposed to take guys fully to the ground during these joint practices. Like there are some kind of whatever, if they're unspoken or spoken rules that you're supposed to abide by in these joint practices. Because ultimately, yes, while it's beneficial to see some sort of like some level of physicality against another team in these joint practices, your ultimate goal is to not get hurt or for any team to leave without injury. And so there is like an element of physicality expected, but like also using your brain. And this just felt like neither team was doing the latter.
The brains were not operational.
So there are pros and cons to these types of fights in joint practice. I really do believe that. Like there are pros, whereas it kind of bonds guys in a very quick fashion. Like somebody gets shoved down. If you've got a teammate running up from behind and then, engaging in battle with that opponent, you feel more connected to your teammate. It's sort of like, you get picked on at school and somebody comes to your defense. Like it fortifies a bit of a brotherhood, just to have that more of that team aspect when stuff like that happens. But the con of this situation is kind of your point. You lose the value of a joint practice.
Yeah.
What do you have a joint practice for? What is the reason? The reason is to get a lot of your first teamers some good work against another first team offense and defense, to see how you stack up against another NFC opponent. And it just felt like with all the interruptions, all the extracurriculars, you were not really actually getting a good assessment or review of any of that. It really became, I hope the key players are nowhere near those skirmishes, nowhere near those fights. You know how stupid it would be if a key player
gets hurt?
Even a depth player at places they're really lacking depth gets hurt in something like that. I think it was Jalen, was it Thompson, who got suplexed there?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he did as well, yeah.
That's a starting safety. And if he's just like, if that's like a foot different of a suplex and it hurts his head or neck, it's different, changes the course of things. So it's stupid in that regard, and it really is. There are good things that can come from it, but in the moment, there's just very little value, and there's just very little to gain from it when things like that transpire. So I don't know. In total, I wonder if they'll just do one joint practice next year and that's call it wraps. Like, do we need to have a second one against the Saints? Because look, the Cowboys have far more to lose
Yes.
than the Saints.
This season, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, again, judging by the outlook, we don't
Right.
necessarily know how things shake out. We never do. That's just
Half
kind of
that
the NFL,
Saints
but
team
yes.
is like they're going to be fighting for roster jobs next year. I mean, this is not. The Cowboys are in far better position going into the season and with the long-term outlook going into the playoffs than the Saints. The Saints are a team that many think are going to tank for Arch.
Yeah.
And maybe not. Maybe Tyler Shook's the guy, but still, that is not a team that we're thinking is going to be a contender this season. So again, they don't have as much, to worry about. They can get, they can pick these battles, pick the fights.
Toss the helmets.
The irony is they ended up losing Alvin Kamara during the joint practice. He's got, I think, a sprained MCL. So their third down running back, who's been with the franchise for years, he's going to be out for at least a month. And so, you're the Saints. You're looking at us, well, what did we gain from that? An injured player, a little bit of work against a good Cowboys team. I don't know.
No, I hear you.
I understand the thinking of, Louis Riddick and saying, it's BS and the fighting. I'm okay with some fighting.
Yeah, some. That's the thing. It's
But
like two or three, fine.
It became far too much of
An
a
interruption.
theme. Yeah.
Yeah.
You lose the value.
Well, and I know we're going to hear from some of the players, but
Let's get the Shotty though, right? That's kind of
yeah.
I mean, Schottenheimer echoed a lot of your sentiments on that front, but this is not too, Brian. This is how Schottenheimer absorbed all of the fighting yesterday.
A little chippy, not the way we like to do business. Got to be better, but I got to look at the film. We're certainly not going to take, from anybody. But again, it was chippy on both sides, and like I said, I want our guys to play on the edge without going over the edge. One guy sounds like he might have thrown a punch, and that's why he left practice.
There were actually more than that who threw punches, which
Okay.
I guess you'll see on the tape,
Yep.
which leads to the question, what's your criteria for when's a guy invited not to practice anymore?
When you're playing head coach, Brad, and you're on both fields, you don't see everything.
I
So
understand that.
it was reported back to me that Donovan threw a punch, and so that's what made us enforce the issue. Honestly, I got to go look at the film, Nick, because I was playing, referee the whole time. And the one thing I have learned is I don't get in the fights. I stay back. But, again, our football team needs this work. And overall, I was disappointed in the work today because I didn't think we got enough good work. I thought there were too many bodies on the ground, and it just felt sloppy to me. So, is what it is.
Was there a moment where you guys thought about calling practice?
Kel and I talked about a couple different things, and we decided once it settled down, we kind of had agreed that if a couple of other things happened, we would cancel it. But they worked through it. Again, they settled into it. But again, there's a discipline element to playing this football game, and unfortunately, we didn't handle that very well today. But again, I don't think we were the only culprits.
That sort of echoed some of our sentiments.
And this was the picture of the day for me. This is not, again, Schottenheimer looking like
A disappointed dad.
either a disappointed dad or a mom that wants to see the manager. And Kellen is over here trying to, you could almost see him trying to
No,
smooth
it looks
things over.
like-
Look, this wasn't, I didn't do any of this.
Kellen just stole Shotty's car and crashed it, trying to go to a party. And he's like, "Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to take the car."
Yep. No,
Or
but
he's
Yeah,
trying
a lot of
he's trying to sell him a
interpretations.
binder of Pokemon cards.
but the hip hop,
likely.
the head tilt, Shotty was full on. I am this close to just wailing on you specifically for this. Are you? Because again, of all the people, Kellen has, friends and relationships in this organization.
Yes.
You would think going into this, if a fight was going to break out, fine, but it wouldn't de-escalate into something that the Cowboys are actively looking at a Kellen Moore-led team thinking, why should we sign up for this again next year, right? So, and also just given Kellen's general disposition, it doesn't feel like
Right.
that. Like this is not a Nick Sirianni team.
Correct. Also, for context, I'm sure that you know this, but if you don't, he's a backup quarterback for the Cowboys. He was obviously an offensive coordinator, super close with Dak. Dak had one of his best seasons when Kellen was calling plays for the Cowboys. So
Yep.
a very intimate familiarity with this organization. So yes, that just adds the context to what you're saying. I think what's most interesting to me is how Schottenheimer has been so, I guess, not forthcoming, but he's been so adamant on the discipline side of what he wants to bring to this football team. I go back to a comment I made yesterday about penalties. That has plagued this team for a couple seasons now. And while, yes, this was a joint practice and it's a different setting, it did seem like there was a lack of discipline kind of across the board from a lot of these players. Now, I say that also talking out of the other side of my mouth with the idea that, like, you want to defend your own teammates and you're not just going to take, as Shotty said, crap from anybody. But it did seem like from Texas, watching clips out in California, it did seem like the Saints players were more the ones to instigate these scuffles that escalated. But at the same time, like, you saw Donovan Ezeraku throwing a punch at a guy who had taken his helmet off.
Which,
like,
of all the people.
I know.
And that's the other thing.
And Brad Sham was, when he was conversing with Shotty, as you just heard in that soundbite, Brad Sham was quick to point out, look, there were a couple players that were throwing punches. It wasn't just Donovan.
Right.
Donovan was the one who was forced to leave practice, but that also goes back to the fact that this is not Donovan Ezeraku's first encounter or first mistake in that realm.
Yeah, he got ejected earlier in training camp. He got ejected in the last game of the season.
Yeah, well, sorry,
but last year. But like that's the thing. It's like it's not. And I don't want to throw Donovan under any kind of bus on that front for this practice, right? What I would like to say, though, is you've already gotten in trouble for this once, twice, and it's been your last basically 2 times involved with this organization on the field. And at a certain point, you got to sit there and ask, okay, the talent's there. We want to see development out of this front, but if this keeps happening, and granted, it hasn't happened in a game in this season yet, but what about this training camp is giving you any kind of confidence that it won't?
I think when you look at what they want, to your point, to get out of this, the fighting feels so counterproductive, and I don't know. I know some of the players talked about their perspective on these fights.
Which is kind of hilarious to juxtapose with Schottenheimer on that front.
Said. Yeah.
Let's hear from the man that Jonah thought got suplexed. I think it's Jalen Thompson spoke afterward. This is SOT 5, Brian.
I think we're real ready, bro. I mean, we practice that all the time, just, running to the ball, green through the white, and all that stuff. Obviously, we can't hit our own teammates, so when we get somebody else in here, it gets a little chippy.
What is the line with that, and how close did you guys come to maybe crossing it at moments today?
We came kind of close to crossing. I think both sides did, but that's just the competitiveness of the sport, I feel like, and just guys just working hard.
But also, like, there are a lot of guys that were out on the field during these kerfuffles that are trying to make the team.
Yes.
That's not going to help your case.
It can like that again. That is the interesting part about this
line.
Yeah, but Shotty's kind of riding the line in and of himself as well, in the sense that he wants his team to be physical and imposing, and impose their will on the opponent, and that involves a little bit of roughhousing on that front. You have to be willing to do it. You just can't be the instigator,
and you can't cross the line.
Exactly, and that's where I think, especially Cowboys coaches, don't want an offense this good to be a pushover, because there are a lot of elements in NFL history. It's like, hey, you got a high-flying offense. That likely means you don't have a great running game. It likely means your defense really isn't up to snuff. You know what I mean? Like, there are aspects that take away from you being considered a physical team that can defend yourself. That does make it seem a little bit more like hockey, where you have enforcers out there, right? So you do need that edge. You just can't. You just cannot let it affect how the team performs on the field.
Yeah.
It's a fine line, right? It's a fine line between getting pushed around and pushed over and being bullied, which I don't think any coach wants, but also being disciplined. And it's a very hard line to tread, especially in mid-August when it's a joint practice.
Yeah.
I mean, all things considered, not a good day of work. I was hoping that the first teamers could probably get a little bit more out of it than, this kind of level of a distraction.
Yeah.
But again, this is what happens when you do a second joint practice. You're doing it with the Saints, toward the tail end of training camp. I just don't know what kind of quality of work they really thought they were necessarily going to get out of this. Like, how do you stack up against one of the worst teams in the NFC? Let's see. And they just try to, they did. The Saints instigated them a lot. And Shotty kind of alluded to it in his clip there that
not the only culprit.
Yeah, he wasn't going to come out and say like, they were picking on us a lot, and we're going to, defend ourselves.
Yeah.
But that was the case more often than not throughout those fights. So, you just don't want to see players getting hurt. Mm-hmm. That's the only thing.
I'm kind of fascinated by the last preseason game now that they're going to host in Dallas. Like, what's that going to look like? Seriously, between the Cowboys and Saints again. I would hope both coaches are entering that going like, hey guys, None of that. None of that on.
Well,
like,
I'm curious what the
television.
conversation was like yesterday in the position meetings.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure it was addressed after practice.
Well, the funny thing is
yesterday.
after practice, and we've got footage of it. I don't know if we have it queued up, but after practice, they started dapping each other
No,
up.
I know. I mean,
like
but I'm talking about in the actual meeting room.
Think about actual football games. These guys go to war. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
throwing punches and taking off helmets, but it's not far off. Especially what happens at the bottom of tackles. So these guys, we got to understand, like between the lines and between the whistles, it is a battlefield. And then the moment it ends, it's, hey, brother, what are you doing for dinner?
No, I know. I'm not talking about like because we saw them smiling walking off the practice field. I'm
a lot of
talking
them.
about what the conversations were like in the meeting rooms from the coaches to the guys, being like, what,
Yeah.
what are you
I
doing?
don't know if it necessarily. You think it reached that level? Well, coaches, I think, talked today, or is it coordinators?
I mean, imagine the conversation
it's
that they're having with
coordinators.
Donovan Izaraku today or yesterday.
You know what's so funny is he's like not. He's like the
he's
last.
like a goofy guy.
He's like the last dude I would ever
Yeah.
think that is getting kicked out of multiple things.
No,
Like,
if you're talking to him at his locker,
he's
or
been
whatever,
booted
he's
out
like
of practice
goofy.
multiple times throughout training camp. Ejected from the final game. He was arrested right in the off season in January.
That sounds right.
For reckless driving.
Another thing that doesn't jive with the personality. But
Yeah, it just seems so off because especially when he came in as a rookie, he's just very soft spoken. He
And
comes
nice,
from
like a-
Nigerian family. I met his parents; they're super sweet, and then seems like a good family boy. But like, listen again, football. The moment that
The helmets go on.
yeah, it's different. And he likes to play with an edge because it gives him an edge. And if that's where they're going to have to figure it out with Donovan is that can you play with that fire, but can you not be Sam Williams? Can you not cross the line? Can you not be a liability and lead to penalties and flags? And that's been a detriment to this Cowboys defense for a few years now. Can you give us the edge without the extracurriculars? And that is really going to be, I would imagine, the challenge the coaches present to him. And he's talked to Schotty throughout the summer.
They've worked on it.
It's a work in progress, clearly.